Very good morning, everybody. Ministers, DGs, senior officials from the Department of Agriculture and the DTIC, colleagues from the media, I hope you're all well. We're all bright and early today in Pretoria, so I thank you all for being on time, and our apologies for the very slight delay. This morning we're going to have the joint statement by the DTIC and the Department of Agriculture on updates relating to South Africa-US relations, particularly as it pertains to the outcomes of the cabinet meeting of last week. But without taking too much time, Minister Tau, if I can ask you to kindly come up and issue us the statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamil. Minister Steenhuisen, DGs, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We've agreed that I read the statement and Minister Steenhuisen answers the difficult questions. But once again, on behalf of the two departments, welcome to this joint media conference that we're holding this morning after the cabinet meeting last week. Following the 30% unilateral tariff imposed by the United States, which came into force on the 7th of August 2025, government has been implementing a response anchored on 5 key elements. 1, continued engagements with the United States to secure a deal and reduce the tariffs. 2, the diversification of exports to alternate markets. 3, an economic response package to vulnerable companies and workers. 4, trade defense against import surge and dumping. And 5, demand-side interventions. Therefore, the press briefing this morning will provide an update on progress on these key elements. With regards to continued engagements with the U.S. to secure a deal and reduce the tariffs, Cabinet has approved that South Africa submits a revised offer as a basis for negotiations with the U.S. The new offer builds on the previous offer submitted in May 2025. The new offer substantively responds to the issues the U.S. has raised in the 2025 National Trade Estimates Report. South Africa has already addressed sanitary and phytosanitary measures in compliance with the biosecurity protocols affecting poultry. In this regard, South Africa granted market access under the conditional self-ban and self-lifting system. This will ensure that the U.S. is able to leverage the tariff rate quota of 72,000 tons already agreed in 2026. Secondly, with regards to blueberries, we've granted market access for states that are free of fruit fly and agreed to mitigation measures with those states with fruit fly. And also with regards to pork, in this regard, it is open, subject to the biosecurity requirements. Consequently, the USA Africa Trade Desk has informed us that it will be shipping containers of poultry and pork to South Africa in 2 weeks' time, which is testimony that these issues have been resolved. The shipments will come from the states of Georgia, Mississippi, California, North Carolina, and Alabama through the port of New Orleans in Louisiana, Savannah in Georgia, and Norfolk in Virginia. Other significant requests from the U.S. was that South Africa consider reducing tariffs as a way to address the deficit and tariff disparity with the European Union due to the SADC-EU Economic Partnership Agreement. South Africa continues consultations with industry in this regard in consultation with other members of the Southern Africa Customs Union, will identify specific lines to respond to this request. On the economic response package, Cabinet has endorsed the economic response package that includes the establishment of an export desk, which serves as a direct point of contact for affected companies. Since being operational thus far, 23 companies have utilized the export support desk and were accordingly assisted. In addition to queries processed, engagements were also initiated with more than 54 South African exporters to the United States, focusing on updates on the negotiations, clarifications on tariffs, elements of an economic response package, and issues linked to market diversification. Measures to assist companies to absorb the tariffs and facilitate long-term resilience and growth strategies to protect jobs and productive capacity in South Africa. The Localization Fund, the Localization Support Fund, has also committed that for affected companies to contribute to the national effort, means would be put in place to support this. The package also includes that the Export and Competitiveness Support Program will include a working capital facility and plant and equipment facility to address short to medium-term needs across all industries. Furthermore, working with the Department of Employment and Labor on measures to mitigate job losses using existing instruments within its entities that can be adjusted to respond to the current challenges has already started. And following consultations with the Competition Commission, a block exemption for exporters has been introduced to enable collaboration and coordination amongst competitors. A draft block exemption will be published by the end of this week so that the process can be concluded expeditiously, and information would be available on the DTIC website. With regards to diversification of exports to alternate markets, the recent imposition of the 30% unilateral tariffs by the US on our exports is a significant policy shift that necessitates a clear and decisive response. South Africa has accelerated its diversification efforts of export markets and enhanced competitiveness to mitigate the economic impact of losing preferential trade preferential trade access. The diversification is a strategic imperative to ensure better resilience of our economy to economic shocks. This is not a plan B, it is a plan A for long-term resilience and competitiveness. We are committed to strengthening our relationship, particularly under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, to build regional resilience. We'll continue to work with the FCFTA and other countries as we ensure that we consolidate partnerships, including our European partners, towards enhancing our trade and investment relations in a manner that unlocks sustainable growth and development and entrenches South Africa in new supply chains. We're looking at Asia, including Japan, Vietnam, and Thailand, the Middle East, and India. We are pursuing these markets because we see growing demand, existing negotiations, and a positive reception to South African products. This is not just about trade numbers. It is directly linked to job protection. Diversification is about protecting rural livelihoods and sustainable agricultural growth for our people. To achieve this, government is deploying dedicated infrastructure for market expansion, including trade and agricultural attaches, increased export certification capacity, and a concerted effort to align our biosecurity standards with the requirements of these new markets. A high-level negotiating team, including both the DTIC and the Department of Agriculture, has been identified and is ready to engage the US towards a mutually beneficial agreement. Our goal is to demonstrate that South African exports do not pose a threat to US industries and that our trade relationship is in fact complementary. While the US is our third largest trading partner after the EU and China, South Africa is the 43rd export destination for the US and accounts for 0.25% of total US imports and is therefore not a threat to US production. Excuse me. Furthermore, the US market accounts for about 4% of our total agricultural exports, or 9.8 billion rand of our total agricultural exports, an increase of 104% from 2018. Government is going to do everything possible to keep the American market open for our goods. We will at the same time accelerate our efforts to diversify markets and build on the efforts we have put in place to ensure predictability in trade and leverage all our existing partnerships to secure markets of our products. With regards to trade defense and protecting domestic industry against import surge and dumping, the tariffs imposed by the US do not apply to South Africa only. They also affect over 130 trading partners with whom American consumers and producers interact. In this regard, many of the orders destined for that nation that now face prohibitive restrictions to enter that market will seek out other outlets for such production. Furthermore, chronic overcapacity observed in the world market for key product markets like steel, glass, subsidized agricultural products, solar, and automotive vehicles will make this surge increasingly harmful, or rather, no, incessantly harmful for our domestic industries. As such, South Africa stands ready to make use of these trade remedy measures, to safeguard and protect its industry within the prevailing agreements of the WTO. This will involve consideration and on the balance of evidence, the use of anti-dumping, anti-subsidy, and safeguard measures to protect domestic industry, which may be affected by such trade deflection and or diversion. Excuse me. And with regards to demand-side interventions to leverage on buying power by local consumers, private sector and government, proudly South Africa will intensify outreach with corporates and retailers through its online store and market access program or platform, which is a procurement tool targeted at the private sector to support increased domestic sales of products, with future export capability of the online platform to be used to assist with export market diversification. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I must apologize. It was a rather long statement, and I know sometimes the voice doesn't comply, but you made it through. Thank you. Colleagues, I'm going to start a round of questions now. I'm going to take 4 questions. Colleagues who are behind the cameras, you are at a disadvantage. I'm not able to see you, so if you're able to come forward, I can acknowledge you. Let me start on that side of the room. Please remember your number. I don't remember colleagues' names. My apologies. I will eventually. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you.
because my understanding was that for the pork, the self-ban and self-lifting system was already in place. Sorry, for the poultry. And then for the pork, it's saying that the same requirements are still there. So what's changed in this offer that you think will tempt the U.S.?
Hi, I'm Julie Bourdin from AFP News Agency. I'd like to know if you have any new information regarding the U.S. Requirements on South Africa's domestic policy. Have they made any new statements or anything to the regard of BEE or any of these issues?
Oh, hi. Sorry, Nick Wilson from News 24. My question, have the US actually been in contact with DTRC and agriculture this past week? Because sometimes it seems like the trade guys might be working with us, but it almost seems like President Trump has a totally different agenda. Any kind of color on that would be great. Thank you.
And Ntokozo Khumalo from Newsroom Africa. 2 questions. If Minister Tau could please just unpack a little bit more around the support desk, those 29 exporters and 53, I think I missed a little bit there. And what industry specifically are they in, and the type of support that they were given? And do we have a monetary value yet of the value of the support package and where exactly it will be streamlined to first? And then a question for Minister Steenhuisen. Looking at imports such as wheat, importing half of South Africa's wheat from Ukraine and so on. Free State was once a province where we get a lot of our wheat. Are we looking at reviving any such industries, for commercial farmers that maybe had exited the industry, but also for emerging farmers in those provinces, so that we do boost and diversify our agricultural exports? We did see that boost in the first quarter of the year in both jobs and the exports. So just keeping that momentum, what are we doing in context of the tariffs? Thank you.
Thanks. If we'll allow Minister Steenhuisen and his team to answer those questions. I know there was a question directed specifically to Minister Tau. Minister, if you'd like to defer to one of your DDGs also, we'll accept that. But Minister Steenhuisen, over to you and your team, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that the self-lift, self-ban was an initial response to one of what the US have regarded as a non-trade barrier to access, particularly for poultry in South Africa. And it was one of the issues that was raised quite strongly with us by the US TR and has come up repeatedly in interactions with the United States of America. I believe that the self-ban, self-lift program that we've offered them removes any concerns that avian flu could be used as a trade barrier to prevent the US of reaching their quota that is designated to them into South Africa. I think it is a fair system. I think it is a system that quite adequately addresses the concerns around that. On the issue of pork, there's ongoing discussions around pork. Our animal scientists maintain that there is a risk of PRRS disease in South Africa if it was to outbreak here. So we require on certain cuts for the glands to be removed from pork cuts to prevent the exposure to the disease. One of the reasons that we do this is because our own pork sector in South Africa is incredibly small and generally is only geared towards domestic production. We do very little export of pork outside of South Africa. And so if our own pork sector was to be wiped out through an outbreak of PRRS disease, that we would see significant food security problems in the country. And that's why we require that. It's not something that we've thumb-sucked. Our animal scientists have put on the table the evidence we use and draw from WOA, who keep registers of where these diseases are prevalent. And I think it behoves us as responsible custodians of our own biosecurity to ensure, much like the US and other countries do, protect their local markets from potential outbreaks. We will continue to engage the US on pork, as Minister Tau has already outlined, but it would be incredibly irresponsible for us just to say, well, let's open up, because it would have grave implications potentially for our local pork sector. Nick, thank you very much. Yes, there certainly have been some engagements with probably the most senior US diplomat currently available to South Africa, and there have been issues that they have been talking about. I would say that some of these issues were not raised with us by the USTR, or certainly in the White House, and have come as somewhat of a surprise, given the fact that we felt we were in a trade negotiation and a tariff negotiation. And we would obviously continue to engage the White House, but there are some other issues that are outside of Minister Tau and Ma's remit and belong firmly in the DIRCO space. And I know that DIRCO, through Minister Lamola, is engaging with his counterparts. As Minister Tau said, we've put together a very high-level team, joint team from agriculture, including our DG, DG Ramasodi, who will be leading the team from our side, to go and engage the United States on a number of these issues, around the trade issue and around the animal and phytosanitary. But some of those other issues are going to have to be a subject of DIRCO and diplomatic engagements with Washington. We also have a trade attaché in Washington. We sent, when we realized we were heading into choppy waters with the US, we deployed a very senior member of our department as an agricultural attaché in Washington. Dr. Jafta has dealt and headed up our plant unit for many, many years. He's experienced, he understands issues, and he's committed to sitting with US counterparts to be able to deal with some of the phytosanitary issues that cut both ways. Minister Tau will deal with the support desk. When it comes to wheat, we've had a very good crop of wheat this year, but we will still remain a net importer of wheat in South Africa. Obviously, we're looking at ways to boost production. It's not an easy crop, and given the fluctuation in prices, in the wheat price, it is often seen as too volatile for farmers to plant, given the fact that there's less volatility in things like maize, because there are other avenues to use maize. You can direct it either through consumption, milling, or for animal feed. And so you have more price points where you're able to do maize. Wheat is slightly different. We have seen an uptick in wheat production, and we will continue as Department of Agriculture to promote wheat, and particularly when it comes to emerging farmers and new entrants, to encourage wheat production. We also have seen a significant increase in barley production in South Africa, largely driven by the fact that there are significant malters that are moving into South Africa. As Minister Tau, I'm sure would know, Soufflet are setting up a big operation in Sedibeng shortly, and that's going to help for a guaranteed uptake for some of our barley products. But wheat remains a tough product, and as I said, the price volatility obviously makes it incredibly difficult to do this. I do want to make this one point, which I think is very important, and that is that trade with the US also benefits the United States of America. Many of our products are counter-seasonal, so they pose no threat whatsoever to US production. And when it comes to citrus, both the pricing and the quality of the South African offering, given the exchange rate difference and given the incredibly high levels of and quality of production in South Africa, ensures that what lands in the United States is incredibly high products that benefit US consumers and benefit US agro processors. And I think that the US gets a good deal from South African agriculture. And it really, I think, will be a shame if we see a drop-off in these excellent quality products not being able to land in those areas. I also think that it is very clear now that these tariffs are not just around balancing trade. We've seen in a number of the letters that have been sent to various other countries, most notably Brazil and India recently, that these things go beyond just tariffs. And I think we're seeing some form of new era now where trade and tariffs are being used to deal with other issues outside of what would generally be trade concerns. And this is obviously a new normal to which we're going to all have to adapt. And as Minister Tau said, this is not something unique to South Africa. We have over 130 other partners around the world who are facing similar issues. We're also seeing that those countries are starting to come together to replace markets that have been lost. I shared last week with Minister Tau a deal that's been signed, for instance, between Brazil, who've been slapped with a 50% tariff, and Japan for the provision of beef. And I think we're going to see a lot of that diversification taking place. We are committed, as Minister Tau said, to diversification, and we're looking at extensive new markets where we believe that with the diversification, we're never overexposed on any one particular market, which ensure that we're able to sustain ourselves and our trade going forward much better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Minister Steenhuisen is handling the onset of the flu better than I am. And maybe we need to convince the president of what the doctors say, that bed rest is the most important thing to do when you have the flu. So there's a bit of lobbying to do there. And maybe Nelly, to present it slightly differently, we went to Cabinet last week and got approval of what would constitute the revised offer to the US. Cabinet gave us an approval on which basis we're then able to engage with the United States Trade Representative on Friday through our head of the bilateral trade desk at the trade branch, who had already dispatched to the US, and they met with the USTR on Friday. On the basis of that, there was an agreement that we are now ready to submit based on the comments received, and will be submitting today. Now, the trick is not to get the US to read about the offer in the newspaper. So please excuse me until such time that at least they've received and processed the offer that we have made. But of course, the work has been done, and that's why I took you through the process that we had undertaken. And I'm not sure whether that adds any bit of color, Nick.
Point of clarity, sorry, Minister Tau, Nick Wilson here again. So basically, from what I can see, I mean, the self-ban regulations, that's always been in place.
No.
Maybe, sorry, I didn't understand that. If you could perhaps just clarify that again. Thank you.
No, remember, this has been a process. So some of the measures that have already kicked in on the basis of our initial offers and engagements with the US are as a result of the process. So we didn't always wait for everything to be in place for us to begin to extend certain offers to the US. And that relates to, amongst others, blueberries, the self-ban, self-test offer, and other initiatives that we've taken, that we've put in place. So if you like, some of it is also goodwill on our side. You've raised these issues. We've started measures to ensure that we're able to address the issues that you've raised with us, which are your areas of concern.